The sudden downpour at dusk left the city soaked and gloomy. The raindrops sliding down the window of the Uber seemed to trace the unease in my soul. I dragged my suitcase to the entrance of the building with a small bubble of joy rising inside me. I had finished my business trip a day earlier than planned. That incredibly difficult contract had finally been signed successfully. For 10 years, I had poured myself into work, financially supporting the entire family, transforming from a fragile girl into a boss woman in the business world. All so Cassius, my husband, could hold his head high in front of others. I promised myself that tonight I would cook a good soul food dinner to make up for all the days he had spent eating takeout. The exhaustion from the long flight seemed to vanish as I imagined his smile when he saw me come home early. However, my steps stopped dead just as I entered the familiar parking garage right at spot B15, a prime space I had paid over $50,000 to own. In that privileged spot, instead of waiting empty for my car, rested a flashy cherry-red Mustang. I narrowed my eyes to check the license plate, and a sensation of unease ran through me like a chill. It was Inaya's car, my sister-in-law. I asked myself, today is Tuesday. Tavon, my little brother, is supervising a construction site on the outskirts. Inaya should be at her office or at her parents' house. Why would she come all the way here during work hours? A vague suspicion arose in my mind, but I quickly dismissed it, reassuring myself with the idea that maybe she had come to ask her brother-in-law for help with something urgent, or simply to drop something off for Tavon. I dragged my suitcase toward the elevator. The screech of the wheels echoed in the silence of the garage, strangely shrill. Inside the elevator, I observed my reflection in the stainless steel mirror, a 35-year-old woman in an impeccable business suit, but with a face that already showed the weariness of time, with deep bags under her eyes from sleepless nights preparing projects. I sighed, wondering if Cassius would realize how much I had aged, or if to him I was still just a tireless money-making machine. The elevator doors opened on the 18th floor. The hallway was deserted. Only my footsteps on the hardwood could be heard. I tiptoed toward our condo with the intention of giving my husband a little surprise. I didn't ring the bell or use the key. I simply slid my finger over the biometric scanner. The lock opened with a soft click, like a sigh. The house was submerged in a silent gloom. With the curtains drawn, the air was impregnated with the scent of lavender essential oil I usually used, but today it seemed mixed with another strange and unfamiliar smell. I took off my heels just as I was about to call out to him. A peculiar sound coming from the master bedroom made a lump form in my throat. It wasn't the television or a normal conversation. It was the breathless moans of a woman mixed with the heavy, agitated breathing of a man. I froze, rigid, as if someone had poured cement over me. The blood seemed to freeze in my veins, then boil and rush to my head. Holding my breath, I stealthily approached the slightly ajar bedroom door. A small sliver of light filtered from inside, enough to see what was happening in our marital bed. On the luxurious charcoal gray sheets that I myself had changed before leaving on my trip, two bodies were intertwined with unbridled passion, and the woman was none other than Inaya, my sister-in-law, whom I had always loved and protected like a sister. Cassius's voice resonated, hoarse and loaded with desire. Every word was like a poisoned needle stabbing directly into my heart. "You are incredibly pure, baby. Not like my old lady. Looking at her doesn't even turn me on anymore. She's a woman as dry as a stick who only knows how to make money." Inaya let out a giggle. Her voice was cloyingly childish. "And yet you're scared to death of her. What if she comes back suddenly?" Cassius laughed with contempt. "Scared of what? She said she was coming back tomorrow, and if she appeared, I'd tell her you came to ask for help fixing a pipe. That stupid woman believes everything. She believes me blindly." My ears were ringing. I felt the floor sinking beneath my feet. I had to cover my mouth tightly to not choke on a sob. 10 years of my youth, 10 years of sacrifice. And what did I receive in return? The word stupid and this infamous betrayal. Rage consumed me. I wanted to throw myself on them and destroy that pair of adulterers. But the logic of a businesswoman held me back at the last second. Trembling, I took my phone out of my jacket pocket, activated the video mode, and aimed the lens through the narrow crack. 2 minutes. I only needed 2 minutes to record the whole raw and dirty truth. 2 minutes to bury the marriage I had once venerated. When I finished recording, I backed away in silence, grabbed my suitcase, closed the front door gently, and left the house like a ghost, taking a shattered heart with me. I don't know how I got out of the building. I only know that sitting in the Uber, my whole body was shaking as if I had malaria. I asked the driver to take me to Makeda's house, my best friend and attorney, the only person I could trust at that moment. I was afraid that if I stayed alone, I would do something crazy or collapse completely. Makeda received me with a look of horror, seeing me planted at her door with a suitcase and a pale face without a drop of blood. When I showed her the 2-minute video, she, known for her composure and sharpness in court, couldn't help but let out a curse full of bitterness. Makeda grabbed my hand tightly. Her eyes burned, but her voice was incredibly firm. "Zara, listen to me closely. Do not make a scene under any circumstances. If you do, you lose. You will lose your dignity and your assets. You have to keep calm, make them ruin themselves, make them leave with empty hands. Understood?" Makeda's words were like a bucket of ice water that restored a bit of my sanity. She was right. I am Zara, a woman who has fought in the business world for years. I couldn't let my emotions destroy me now. They had trampled on my pride, our family relationship, and my marriage. I would return that pain multiplied by 10. After resting for a few hours at Makeda's to regain strength, I applied makeup carefully to hide my puffy eyes and gaunt face. Then I dragged the suitcase back home when night had completely fallen. I took a deep breath in front of the door, telling myself that I was about to enter a great stage and that I had to be the best actress. I opened the door, this time making noise on purpose, and called out loudly, "Honey, I'm home. I missed you so much." There was a brief and disturbing silence, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. Cassius appeared from the bedroom, already dressed in impeccable pajamas, but with his hair still somewhat messy and a hint of panic on his face that he hadn't managed to hide. He ran toward me to take my suitcase, grinning from ear to ear, although his eyes didn't stop scanning my expression. "Wow, didn't you say you were coming back tomorrow? What a surprise! Why didn't you call me so I could pick you up?" I smiled, a smile that felt sickeningly fake as I caressed his arm. "The project finished early. I changed my ticket to come back. I wanted to surprise my love. Aren't you happy?" Cassius hugged me with a forced laugh. "Of course I'm happy. My wife coming home is the best thing that can happen to me. I missed you to death." His hug caused a chill to run through me, but I stood still. My sharp woman's intuition detected something anomalous immediately. Although Cassius had opened all the windows to air out the place and had probably sprayed half a can of air freshener, the sweet and intense aroma of a very specific perfume still floated in the air. Coco Mademoiselle was Inaya's signature fragrance, and I myself had gifted her that bottle for her birthday last year. That perfume was now irrefutable proof. The proof of her presence in this house, on my husband's body, and probably in my own bed. I pulled away from his embrace, feigning exhaustion, and headed for the bedroom. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to take a shower and go to sleep." Upon entering the room, the first thing that caught my attention was an almost unnatural order. And what surprised me most were the sheets. I remembered perfectly having put on a set of charcoal gray tencel sheets before leaving. But now in their place was a cheap, pastel pink cotton set that I had banished to the back of the closet a long time ago. I turned to Cassius with an expression of feigned surprise. "Hey, why did you change the sheets? I had just put the other ones on." Cassius jumped and stammered for a couple of seconds before giving a quick explanation. "Oh yeah, this afternoon while watching TV, I spilled a cup of coffee on the bed and it stained everything, so I put them in the wash. I pulled these out to make do." a lie so clumsy that even a child would have discovered it. But I just nodded, with a slight smile. Wow, you're so clumsy. Well, I'll change them again tomorrow. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned the shower on full blast. Under the stream of water, I didn't cry. I looked at myself in the mirror with dry, cold eyes. In the stillness of the night, the ticking of the wall clock resonated, each dry beat like a hammer blow to my bleeding heart. Cassius slept beside me. His breathing was regular. That broad back I once considered my greatest refuge now felt strange and terribly cold to me. I curled up on the edge of the bed, trying to make myself as small as possible so as not to brush against his skin. The sensation of disgust I had felt since the afternoon was still stuck to me like a layer of mud impossible to wash off. I lay with my eyes open, staring at the dark ceiling, wondering how a person could change so much in so little time. 10 years of sharing everything. Were they not worth more than a moment of fleeting pleasure? I waited for the clock to strike 2 in the morning. Cassius's snores became deeper and constant. I knew my moment had arrived. Holding my breath, I turned with slow and cautious movements, like a thief acting in her own house. The light from the nightstand illuminated Cassius's face. He slept peacefully, without a trace of guilt or worry. That only stoked the fury inside me. With extreme care, I took his hand, the same hand I had held tightly on our wedding day. Now I used it to unlock his phone, which was on the nightstand. The screen lit up, its bluish light projecting a frigid glow onto my face. Quickly, I lowered the volume and began my silent investigation. WhatsApp, Instagram, text messages. Everything was spotless, like a blank page, not a single trace, not a suspicious message. That perfect cleanliness was proof of his meticulous preparation, but I wasn't a naive woman easy to fool. I knew the tricks of men who want to hide secrets all too well. I went into the app settings looking for hidden folders skillfully disguised as work management software. And sure enough, a secure messaging app appeared that required a numeric password. I tried his date of birth without success. Our wedding anniversary didn't work either. Finally, I entered Inaya's date of birth. The screen unlocked instantly, revealing an avalanche of messages. The images were so vulgar, I had to close my eyes to suppress the nausea. But that wasn't all. Trembling, I accessed his banking app, where I trustingly let him manage his personal expenses. The transaction history appeared like a crushing sentence. The figures danced before my eyes, and I felt as if someone were squeezing my heart. Transfer of $52, concept, for my baby. Transfer of $13,000, concept, a life by your side. Those numbers, codes of love among teenagers, were now being used by my husband, a 40-year-old man, to seduce his sister-in-law. And worst of all, a transaction from last week, a credit card payment of $10,000 at a luxury jewelry store. I remembered that day Cassius had come home with a face like a funeral, complaining that the company was doing poorly, that bonuses had been cut, and that he couldn't give me money for household expenses that month. At that moment, pitying him, I believed him so he wouldn't feel pressured. Not only did I not ask him for anything, but I transferred money to his account so he would be more comfortable. It turned out that my generosity and trust had served for him to embezzle family accounts and buy expensive jewelry for his mistress. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every transfer. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the phone. After sending all the evidence to my own mobile and erasing any trace of my access, I put his phone back where it was. I lay down, but my body was frozen, as if I had just come out of a walk-in freezer. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual and prepared a full breakfast, as always, but my heart was completely cold. Cassius came out of the bedroom stretching and yawning. Seeing me set the table, he smiled. "What a hard-working woman. Breakfast already ready." I served him a bowl of grits and placed it in front of him. I tried to make my voice sound normal, but my eyes, sharp as knives, scrutinized him. "Eat while it's hot. Hey, by the way, yesterday when I came back, I saw Inaya's car parked in our spot. Weird, right? Tavon wasn't there. What was she doing here during office hours? I thought she'd be working." Cassius, who was bringing a spoonful to his mouth, jumped so much that the spoon fell with a dry clatter into the bowl, splashing the table. His face paled instantly. He bent down in a hurry to pick it up, hiding his nervousness. "Oh, yeah. Well, I guess she came to drop something off for Tavon. I don't know, honestly. I was stuck in the office all day." I observed his clumsiness, feeling an indescribable bitterness. This man I once considered my everything was now just a clumsy and cowardly liar. I smiled, a faded smile. "Oh, right. I thought you would know. The doorman told me her car was parked there for a long time, all afternoon." Cassius fell silent abruptly, eating with his head down, not daring to look at me even once. The atmosphere of the breakfast became dense, heavy, as if a slab were crushing our chests. After the spoon incident, Cassius became much more cautious. He walked on tiptoes, spoke in a low voice, and constantly threw sideways glances at me. Every time I picked up my phone, his body tensed. He knew the prey was starting to smell danger, but the trap I had set was just beginning to close. That night I came home later than usual on purpose, so he would wait for dinner with anxiety. When I entered, dinner was cold, and he was sitting on the sofa with an expression of unease. Seeing me, he jumped up to reheat the food. That excessive kindness felt even more repugnant to me, because I knew that behind that fake concern hid a universe of guilt. During dinner, as I served him a piece of catfish on his plate, I dropped a question into the air, light as a breeze. "Honey, you're sleeping poorly lately. You look bad." Cassius paused for a moment and then forced a smile. "Well, sometimes I have a lot of stress at work. It's a bit hard to sleep. Why do you ask?" I put down my silverware and looked him directly in the eyes. My gaze was no longer that of a sweet wife. It contained a sharp suspicion. "It's just that today, when I went to turn off the light, the doorman stopped me to ask me something. He says the nights I was away, he saw you leave with the car in the middle of the night and come back almost at dawn. I told him he was surely mistaken, that you sleep like a log, but he insisted he saw our car's license plate." Cassius's face went from red to pale white. He almost choked on the bite he was chewing. He grabbed the glass of water and drank in a long gulp to calm himself. His eyes moved nonstop, avoiding my direct gaze. Beads of sweat started to break out on his forehead, even though the air conditioning was set to 72 degrees. "That doorman, he's probably old and seeing things. Where would I go at those hours? What nonsense." His voice had become abnormally high-pitched, a clear sign of someone who feels discovered and tries to cover up the truth. I sighed, feigning genuine concern, and put my hand on his forehead. I told him that too, but he described it to me in detail. He said the car was heading toward the outskirts. "I'm getting worried. What if you're sleepwalking? I read in the paper that a lot of people with stress do unconscious things at night and don't remember anything in the morning. What if we go to the doctor tomorrow? It's dangerous. If something happens to you on the road, what would become of me?" My words, loaded with apparent solicitude, were actually pliers tightening his terrified mind. I was executing my plan, to plant in his head the fear that his secret escapades had been discovered, but under an appearance of innocence. Cassius pushed my hand away, visibly upset, and got up to pace from one side of the living room to the other. No, that's not necessary. Surely it's that I'm sleepwalking. Lately I'm very tense. I'll regulate myself, I'll drink some herbal tea, and that's it. No need to spend money on doctors." I followed his back with my gaze, smiling inwardly. If he clung to such a ridiculous excuse as sleepwalking, it meant that fear had already overcome his reasoning. I continued with another psychological blow. "Well, be very careful. I've heard that if you wake a sleepwalker suddenly, they can suffer a shock, and the doorman also told me that one of those nights he thought he saw your car around Inaya's house area. I suppose you were worried she was alone and stopped by to see how she was, right? You're so thoughtful." My last sentence was like a fatal stab. Cassius stood petrified. He turned abruptly to look at me with eyes bulging with panic. "What? That's not true. Don't listen to nonsense. I'm going to sleep. I have a headache." With that, he fled to the bedroom like a fugitive and slammed the door shut. I was left alone before the half-finished dinner. I took a sip of cold soup. A bitter taste spread through my mouth. His fear was exactly what I wanted to see. I wanted him to live with constant anguish, unable to eat or sleep in peace, just like me at that moment. That night, Cassius tossed and turned in bed without being able to sleep. He turned over again and occasionally picked up his phone secretly to type a message that he quickly deleted. I had my back to him, pretending to be deeply asleep, but I listened to every one of his labored breaths. I knew those messages were for Inaya, to warn her of the danger and plan a strategy. Keep worrying, keep planning, I thought, because the more you thrash about, the deeper you'll sink into the mud I've prepared for you. The night enveloped the room, but inside me a flame of revenge burned, illuminating the darkest corners of this marriage. The next morning, I left the house earlier than usual, with the excuse of an important meeting. In reality, I had an appointment with the private investigator Makeda had recommended. The cafe, situated in a quiet alley, was completely isolated from the city bustle. The detective handed me a thick brown envelope, looking at me with a mixture of compassion and pity. I took a deep breath and with trembling hands opened the envelope. Although I had mentally prepared myself, seeing the photos inside, I felt as if someone had punched me in the chest, a pain that left me breathless. It turns out they didn't need to wait for the night or my business trips. Cassius and Inaya had turned their lunch break into their ideal time for dates. In those sharp photographs, they were sitting in discreet cafes, holding hands, looking at each other with the same passion as two first-time lovers. In one photo, Cassius was wiping Inaya's mouth with tenderness. The smile on his face was so radiant and sweet that I was stunned. He hadn't smiled at me like that in a long time. There were other photos where they entered together into a pay-by-the-hour motel hidden in an alley and came out an hour later looking satisfied and with disheveled clothes. I went through the photos one by one. Each was irrefutable proof of the infamous betrayal of the two people closest to me. Not only were they deceiving me and Tavon, but they were trampling on basic morality in broad daylight. I remembered the times I had called Cassius at noon, and he whispered that he was in a meeting or taking a nap in the office because he was exhausted. It turns out his exhaustion came from servicing his mistress. Disgust invaded me. I felt nauseous thinking I had shared a bed with this man, that I had trusted him blindly. I put the photos in my bag, paid the detective, and drove to the office. I spent the whole day working like an automaton, trying to bury myself in paperwork so as not to think about those dirty images. In the evening, upon returning home, Cassius returned to playing the role of the exemplary husband. He came out to greet me with enthusiasm, asking if I was tired, if I wanted him to prepare something special for dinner. Seeing his hypocritical face, I just wanted to scream in his face that I knew everything. But I held back. "I'm a little tired. Must be the weather change. You have dinner if you want. I'm going to rest a bit." Cassius seemed disappointed, but insisted on appearing attentive. He followed me to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and raised his hand to give me a shoulder massage. "Let me give you a massage. You work too hard for this house." As soon as his hand touched my shoulder, I shuddered and pulled away as if he had touched something repugnant. My instinctive reaction left him paralyzed, with his hand suspended in the air. "No, honey, my body hurts a lot. Don't touch me. Let me lie down for a while and it will pass." I rushed to find an excuse, covering myself with the blanket to hide the disgust drawn on my face. Cassius withdrew his hand with a shadow of doubt in his eyes that quickly transformed into resignation. "Okay, well, rest. I'm going to watch TV to let you sleep." When the door closed, I could finally let out my breath. Tears sprang forth, soaking the pillow. I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for me, for my 10 years of youth wasted on the wrong person. The sensation of being betrayed, of being belittled, hurts more than any physical wound. It ate away at my soul little by little, turning me from a woman full of love into an iceberg. That night, Cassius got back into bed and tried to hug me from behind. His warm breath on the back of my neck made my skin crawl. His hands started to search for me, seeking intimacy, but my body went rigid. I pushed his hand away firmly. "I told you I'm tired. Let me sleep." Cassius sighed deeply, turned over and muttered something, clearly dissatisfied. I lay motionless with my eyes open in the darkness, listening to his sighs. My heart was a block of ice. Physical contact with him had become torture. I couldn't stand sharing a bed with a man who had just rolled around with another woman, who was also my sister-in-law. The physical distancing was the first sign that this marriage was clinically dead. But Cassius, in his arrogance, believing his deception was perfect, still hadn't realized the danger looming over him. He kept thinking my tiredness was temporary, or that I was angry about some nonsense. He didn't know I was accumulating evidence, accumulating hate, to prepare the most terrible punishment for him. Those lunch dates, those hands clasped in secret, everything would be part of the sentence I had reserved for him. And that day was not far off. With the evidence of infidelity in my possession, I decided to move to the next phase of my plan, examining the bloodstream of our marriage, the finances. I knew Cassius valued money enormously. He was with me partly because I was the main economic support of the house, while his career was mediocre and depended on my influence to get contacts. I needed to confirm how much family money he had diverted to support his mistress, and more importantly, I wanted to see his reaction when I cornered him on the subject of money. One weekend evening, I prepared a more elaborate dinner than usual. I served him a glass of wine and created a relaxed and cheerful atmosphere. When Cassius was already a little tipsy, with a flushed face and talking nonstop about grandiose plans, I started speaking softly. "Honey, today I went to see a plot of land on the outskirts. It's beautiful, an excellent location, and the price is a steal because the owner needs the money urgently. I was thinking of taking out our joint savings to put down a deposit. It would be a shame to let an opportunity like this pass." As I spoke, I watched his expression closely. Just as I expected, the smile was wiped from his face instantly. The wine glass he was holding trembled slightly. His eyes, clouded by alcohol, became suddenly lucid and alarmed. He put the glass on the table, swallowed with difficulty, and stammered. "Land? The market is frozen right now. Buying now is ruinous. And why do you want to take out the money so suddenly, without consulting me first?" I smiled with a voice sweet but firm. "Precisely because it's a steal, I'm consulting you. Money in the bank barely gives interest. Investing in land is what yields profits. We'll go to the bank together tomorrow, okay? We'll take out about $100,000 and we'll see about the rest." Hearing the figure of $100,000, his face changed color and sweat started to bead on his forehead. "100,000? Calm down a bit. It's just that, actually—" He hesitated, his eyes desperately searching for a plausible excuse. "Actually what?" I pressed him, my sharp gaze penetrating his conscience. Cassius took a deep breath and let out the lie I had already foreseen. "Actually, I put all the savings into the stock market. The market has plummeted and I'm trapped. I can't sell now. If we sell, we'll lose a lot, almost half. Give me a little time to see if the market recovers." The stock market excuse, a classic of husbands who spend family money in secret. I knew perfectly well that he had never invested in the stock market, or if he had, it was with insignificant amounts. I knew from my own investigations that he had been taking that money out little by little, transferring it to a secret account from which it flowed into Anaya's pockets, or was used to pay installments on a small condo in his mother's name. But I pretended to believe him, sighing with an air of disappointment. "My God, why do you do these things without telling me? It's the money we've saved for years, and now you say we've lost half. It was very reckless." Seeing that I seemed to have believed him, Cassius sighed in relief and took my hand to justify himself. "I just wanted to earn a little more for our future. Really, I didn't expect to have such bad luck. Come on, don't be mad. I promise that as soon as I recover what was invested, I'll take it all out and give it to you to manage." "Okay." I looked at his pleading and cowardly face, feeling immense contempt. The future he spoke of was actually his and his mistress's, built on my sweat and tears. I pulled my hand away and got up coldly to clear the plates. "Fine, you figure it out, but know that I'm not going to forgive losing that money. I'll let it pass this time, but don't let me find out you're hiding anything else from me." I turned my back on him and went to the kitchen, leaving him sitting there with an expression of relief mixed with unease. He thought he had fooled me, that he had gotten out of this one, but he didn't know that that stock market excuse had just sealed his sentence. I had already confirmed what I needed to know. The money had disappeared, and the trust had run out. The betrayal was now total, encompassing the body, feelings, and finances. He had taken everything of ours to feed an illicit relationship. That night, listening to Cassius's sighs, my mind no longer harbored plans for reconciliation. In its place were figures, legal steps to recover what was mine. I would recover my money down to the last cent, and the price he would pay wouldn't be just monetary. It would include the honor and career he coveted so much. That weekend, a cold north wind brought winter with it, sneaking into every corner of the city. But the cold of the weather couldn't compare to the ice in my heart. My parents called saying it had been a long time since we all gathered, and they wanted us to come over for lunch to warm up. I accepted immediately. In my mind, I was already calculating that this would be the perfect stage for the next act of my play. When Cassius and I arrived, Tavon and Inaya had just arrived too. Tavon, as always, simple, in a worn denim jacket and hands roughened by construction work, was carrying several bags of fruit for my parents. Seeing my brother, so hard-working and kind-hearted, and then Inaya by his side, I felt a pang of pain and rage. Inaya was spectacularly dressed today, very different from how she usually looked. She wore a tight wool dress that showed off her curves, a cream-colored coat, and perfect makeup that highlighted her beauty. But what caught my attention most wasn't her appearance, but the object shining on her neck under the living room light. It was a white gold necklace with a small diamond that gave off a captivating and expensive light. I recognized it instantly. It was the result of that $10,000 transaction at the luxury jewelry store I had seen on Cassius's bank statement. The money he had told me he didn't have because his bonus had been cut. The meal passed in a lively atmosphere. My parents were happy to see the whole family gathered. Tavon didn't stop serving food to his wife, peeling shrimp for her, looking at her with overflowing love and pride. My naive brother didn't know that the woman he cared for with such dedication wore around her neck the proof of a betrayal bought with the sweat and tears of his own sister and brother-in-law. I swallowed the food as if it were stones, with a lump in my throat, but I kept smiling with the most serene smile I could fake. When everyone had eaten and was relaxed, I put down my silverware and, as if I had just discovered it, looked at Inaya and exclaimed with admiration, "What a beautiful necklace, Inaya. You can tell from a mile away it's good quality. That design is very trendy. Did you just buy it?" My question was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, creating ripples across the entire table. All eyes turned to Inaya's neck. Cassius, who was next to me, froze with his glass in his hand. His face lost color. He bent down coughing to hide his panic. Inaya jumped and instinctively brought her hand to the necklace. She looked quickly at Cassius seeking help, but only found his cowardly evasion. She stammered, her smile becoming forced and strange. "No way, Zara. This is costume jewelry. I bought it online for fun. It's super cheap. Where would I get the money to buy something real?" "Really?" I exclaimed with a tone of fake disappointment, but with a gaze cold as steel. "Oh well, it looked like a real diamond with that sparkle, but it suits you perfectly. It gives you a very elegant air, doesn't it, Tavon?" Tavon, who was eating, looked up and grinned from ear to ear, nodding. "Yeah, everything looks good on my wife. I tell her not to wear so much fake jewelry, lest she get an allergy, but she loves it." Tavon's innocent response hurt me even more. Inaya sighed in relief, seeing that her husband suspected nothing, but she didn't dare look me in the eye. I turned to Cassius and patted him on the shoulder with a tone sweet but full of intention. "Look, honey, your sister-in-law looks beautiful even with costume jewelry, and I, on the other hand, never wear anything. Why don't you buy me one just like it one of these days? I love this style." Cassius jumped, Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cold. He laughed nervously. His voice trembled. Yes, I'll see if I have money and I'll buy it for you. Come on, eat, the soup is getting cold. I observed the pathetic picture of the two traitors, smiling inwardly. Keep acting, keep lying. That necklace might be fake in Anaya's lies. But your guilt was real. Your boldness was real. I put a piece of chicken on Cassius's plate with the affectionate gesture of a devoted wife. But in my heart, the love of a wife had died the instant I saw the fear in his eyes. The following days I maintained a strangely calm attitude, but inside I was meticulously calculating my next move. I knew attacking their finances or feelings wasn't enough. I had to hit where it hurt Cassius most: his pride, his reputation. The opportunity arrived when his company organized the annual Client Appreciation Gala. It was an important event attended by all executives with their spouses. And of course I, as the wife of a department head, was invited to maintain appearances. I chose an elegant navy blue evening gown and seductive makeup. I wanted to look stunning, not to regain Cassius's attention, but so everyone could see how perfect the wife he was cheating on was. At the party, amidst soft music and the shimmer of chandeliers, I quickly identified my target, Mrs. Caldwell, the deputy director's wife. Mrs. Caldwell was known for being the company loudspeaker, a woman who loved gossip and always looked for juicy news to liven up her afternoon teas. With a glass of wine in hand, I approached her while she showed off her new emerald ring. After a few minutes of trivial chat about fashion and beauty, I sighed with an air of melancholy. Mrs. Caldwell, astute, noticed immediately, leaned in, and whispered with curiosity. "What's wrong, Zara? You don't seem very happy. Has good old Cassius done something to you?" I looked around as if fearing someone would hear us, and led her to a more discreet corner, speaking in a low voice, with a tone of trust and concern. "Oh, Mrs. Caldwell, I'm telling you because I consider you like a sister. Please don't tell anyone. It's so embarrassing." Mrs. Caldwell's eyes lit up like lighthouses. She nodded repeatedly. "Girl, of course, just between us. My lips are sealed. What you tell me goes to the grave with me." I bit my lip, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "It's just that, lately, I'm very worried. The days I was traveling, the doorman of my building told me he saw my husband's car leave at dawn and come back almost at sunrise. And the weirdest thing is that there was always a woman in the passenger seat. I trust my husband blindly. He's very good and a bit boring, but I've heard rumors. They say the silhouette of that woman was very familiar, that she looked like my sister-in-law." Mrs. Caldwell was left jaw-dropped. She almost dropped her wine glass. She stammered, "What? Your sister-in-law? But are you sure? What a scandal!" I rushed to wave my hands with a panicked face, as if it had slipped out. "Oh no, they're just rumors. Surely people were mistaken. Or maybe Cassius was taking her somewhere on the way. They are family. Please don't think badly of him. I'm just worried that malicious tongues will hurt him at the company." The more I defended him, the more Mrs. Caldwell was convinced of the conspiracy. She patted me on the arm with a look of compassion mixed with the excitement of having a scoop. "Oh, you poor thing, you're so good you're foolish. In these times you can't trust anyone, and even less when the fire is close to the straw. Don't you worry. I'll keep an eye out to see if there's any hussy lurking around your husband." With tears in my eyes, I thanked her, while inwardly smiling with disdain. I knew Mrs. Caldwell perfectly. As soon as I turned around, she would embellish the story and tell it to at least 10 other people during the party, starting with her classic, "I'll tell you something, but don't tell anyone." The rumor would spread like a toxic wind, sowing doubt and contempt over Cassius's head. That night, as I walked arm in arm with my husband receiving compliments on how happy and good we looked, I felt the stares and whispers behind our backs, the giggles loaded with double meanings. Cassius, oblivious to everything, smiled and toasted, not knowing that a storm of public opinion was forming over him and that the person who had unleashed it was his own wife. The sensation of using the malicious tongues of the world to punish a traitor was at once cruel and strangely satisfying. Just as I had foreseen, the toxic wind of rumor took effect at breakneck speed. A few days after the party, the atmosphere at home became suffocating. Cassius arrived from work frowning, throwing his briefcase on the sofa with rage. The strong smell of alcohol coming off him was unmistakable. I, who was reading, put down the book and, feigning concern, ran to take off his jacket. "Have you been drinking? Why so much today? Did something happen at the office?" Cassius pushed my hand away and let himself fall heavily onto the sofa, loosening his tie as if he were being strangled. He grunted, "Man, that bunch of gossiping old ladies, always inventing things to stain people's names." I served him a glass of water with lemon and sat beside him, rubbing his back, agitated by anger. My voice was innocence personified. "What's wrong, honey? Who said something about you? Tell me. He who owes nothing fears nothing. If we live with a clear conscience, what do we care what others say?" Cassius turned to look at me with bloodshot eyes. He observed me intently, as if trying to guess if I knew something or if I was also part of the gossip, but my face only reflected worry and absolute trust, which made him look down and sigh. "You don't know anything. They're saying I'm having an affair, and on top of that with, better, you don't hear it. You'll dirty your ears. They're jealous. Since they know I'm about to be promoted to deputy director, they're trying to sink me." Inside, I smiled. "So you also know what pain and humiliation feel like when people whisper behind your back." I continued adding fuel to the fire with my usual sweet tone. "Wow, who can control wagging tongues? Surely it's because you help everyone and you're very attractive and people envy you. But don't react so brusquely. The more you defend yourself, the more they'll think it's true. Ignore them and go on with your life. If you're innocent, no one can do anything to you." My phrase, "the more you defend yourself, the more they'll think it's true," was like a needle stuck in a sensitive spot. Cassius jumped, turned around, and muttered, "Yeah, I haven't done anything, so I have nothing to fear. It just bothers me." But I clearly saw his hand shaking, not from rage, but from fear. He was afraid that the truth would come to light, that the rumors weren't just air, but the smoke preceding the fire. That night, Cassius didn't eat dinner. He locked himself in the bathroom and let the water run for a long time, as if he wanted to wash off the dirty words that had stuck to his body. From the living room, listening to the sound of the water, I felt a strange indifference. He suffered because his honor had been sullied. But did he think of my honor or Tavan's when he committed his depraved acts? He despised me for being a woman who only took care of the house, but it was that very woman who, step by step, was tightening the noose around his neck, and he still believed it was an affectionate hug. Late at night, when Cassius was already sleeping deeply under the effects of alcohol, his phone on the nightstand lit up. A message. I glanced at it, and without needing to unlock it, read the brief text on the lock screen. "I'm so scared. People look at me weird. What if we end it?" It was a message from Anaya. I smiled with disdain. Their diabolical alliance was more fragile than I thought. A little social pressure, and it was already starting to crack. I didn't delete the message. I left it there so Cassius would read it when he woke up, so he could see that his little mistress was also trembling, and that he, the supposed man, ran the risk of losing everything. His drunkenness tonight might help him forget reality for a moment, but tomorrow, upon waking, the real nightmare would have only just begun. I turned off the light. Darkness flooded the room, but in my eyes the path ahead was clearer than ever. The pressure of the rumors not only took away Cassius's sleep, but also deeply affected Anaya, the weakest link in this story. Thanks to the detective's information and her behavior in the family group chat, I realized Anaya was on the verge of a panic attack. She started acting strangely. She would log on late at night. She posted vague and melancholic statuses about life and loneliness and deleted them a few minutes later. Every night, around 1 or 2 a.m., when Cassius thought I was sleeping, he would sneak into the bathroom with his phone. His whispers, though low, reached me in the silence of the night. I heard the irritation in his voice and the sobs on the other end of the line. Anaya was tormenting him. She was afraid of her co-workers' stares, afraid of Tavan's unconditional love, while she carried immense guilt. She wanted Cassius to take responsibility, to protect her, or at least give her some kind of guarantee. To relieve the pressure, Anaya launched into a spiral of compulsive shopping. The detective sent me bills for luxury brands and expensive cosmetics that she paid for without blinking. I knew that money didn't come from her modest salary, nor from what Tavon gave her, but from the savings Cassius had been slipping her in secret. Seeing the figures in that covert financial report, I felt a sharp pain. The money I had earned with so much effort had become the tranquilizer for an adulteress. But what caught my attention most wasn't the luxuries, but a photo the detective had taken the previous afternoon. Inaya, wearing a mask, huge sunglasses, and a furtive look, was entering a private gynecological clinic hidden in a small alley. She was inside for almost an hour and came out with her face undone, clutching her bag against her belly, as if hiding a terrible secret. My woman's intuition told me that a storm, much bigger than everything before, was about to break. Inaya's visit to the gynecologist at this delicate moment, added to her panic and the late-night calls, could only point to one thing. She had an ace up her sleeve, a weapon that could destroy everything or save her situation. A small life was forming. I sat on the sofa watching the night sky, black and starless, and a chill ran down my spine. If Inaya was really pregnant and the child was Cassius's, the tragedy of this family would reach its peak. What would become of Tavon and my parents? How would I face such a cruel truth? But I clenched my fists tight. My nails dug into my skin. Whatever happened, I couldn't collapse. I had come too far to turn back. If she planned to use that baby as a shield to pressure Cassius or to bind Tavon, I would turn that child into the rope that would hang them both. I would wait. I would wait for her to show her cards, and then I would show everyone the repugnant face of those who invoke love to commit despicable acts. The storm was gathering. The heavy sky seemed about to collapse, announcing a turbulent tomorrow. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and prepared for the next blow, a blow called blood ties. That weekend, a fine, cold drizzle fell over the city. The chill of early winter seeped into the bones, but inside my parents' small house, the atmosphere was warm. It smelled of home cooking, and laughter could be heard. My parents, country folk, simple and hardworking, only wished to see their children happy. So every time we gathered, they went out of their way in the kitchen without letting anyone help them. I was in the living room peeling fruit, but my ears were attentive to everything, and my gaze didn't leave Inaya, who was sitting curled up in a corner of the sofa with a pale face and dark circles from sleepless nights. Lunch was served with all the delicacies my mother had prepared since morning: roast chicken, beef stew, ham, and good wine. Tavon, my brother, with his usual carefree attitude, didn't stop serving food to his wife, telling her anecdotes from work and future plans. He looked at her with absolute love and trust. Seeing him, my heart shrank. It was like watching an innocent child playing on the edge of a cliff. Suddenly, Inaya put her silverware on the table. The sharp metallic sound cut the conversation. She covered her mouth, hesitated for an instant, and after taking a deep breath, as if to gather courage, said with a trembling voice, "Mom, Dad, everyone, I have something to tell you." Everyone fell silent. Their gazes locked on her. Inaya looked sideways at Cassius. My husband. That look contained a mixture of pleading and threat. Then she lowered her head and whispered, "I'm pregnant." Her words were like an atomic bomb dropped on the table, creating a sepulchral silence that exploded into a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Tavon stood paralyzed for a few seconds and then shouted with joy, jumping to hug his wife. "My God, really? I'm going to be a father! Dad, Mom, I'm going to be a dad!" My parents were radiant. My mother, with tears in her eyes, clasped her hands and thanked the ancestors. She quickly served her daughter-in-law a plate of hot stew. "Eat, honey. Eat so my grandson grows strong. No wonder I saw you looking so pale lately." Amidst that euphoria, only 3 people felt something different. Inaya forced a smile, a grimace that looked like crying. She brought her hand to her belly, not to protect it, but as if clinging to a last lifesaver. I remained motionless like a statue, observing everything with a frigid gaze, but the one who reacted most violently was Cassius. Upon hearing the words, "I'm pregnant," his face lost all color. The silverware fell from his hands, making a strident noise amidst the congratulations. He stared at Anaya with eyes bulging with panic and terror, stammering unintelligible words. Tavon, too happy to notice, bent down to pick up the silverware for him, laughing. "Brother-in-law, are you so happy your hands are shaking? Surely you really wanted to be an uncle, too." Cassius jumped and, taking the silverware, tried to sketch a smile that was more pathetic than a wail. Yes, I'm very happy. Congratulations." He drank a glass of water in one gulp to hide his trembling, but sweat was already beading on his forehead. I read his dark soul in that instant. He was terrified. That pregnancy wasn't in his plans. It was a dangerous variable that could destroy everything he tried to hide. Inaya had used the baby as her last card to force him to assume responsibility, or at least to bind Tavon and secure an exit. I raised my glass of water and, with a voice calm but full of double meaning, addressed Inaya. "Congratulations to you both. What great joy. Inaya, a pregnancy is something very important. Make sure you go to all the checkups to know exactly how many weeks along you are, and take good care of yourself." Hearing me mention the weeks of gestation, Inaya jumped. Her face paled. She bent down in a hurry to drink soup, avoiding my inquisitive gaze. The meal continued amidst the laughter of my parents and Tavon, but under the table, legs were shaking with fear, and in the heart of each, a storm began to brew. After the party ended, we said goodbye to my parents and returned home, now at night. The interior of my husband's luxury car plunged into a dense and heavy silence, so much so that the hum of the engine and the sound of tires on wet asphalt could be heard. Cassius drove with hands clutching the steering wheel, knuckles white from tension. His gaze was fixed on the road, but I knew his mind was chaos. The impact of the lunch news hadn't dissipated yet. The pregnancy was like a rock pressing on his chest, making breathing difficult. I, in the passenger seat, leaned my head back and pretended to sleep, but in reality, I observed every one of his gestures. I knew he was mired in uncertainty, wondering whose son that was, Tavon's or the result of his torrid siestas in motels with Inaya. That doubt was eating him alive, turning him into a pathetic coward. I broke the sepulchral silence. My voice, though soft, resonated in the confined space, making Cassius start as if he had received an electric shock. "Is something wrong, honey? I just called your name. No need to get scared like that." Cassius swallowed, trying to keep calm. "No, it's just that I was focused on the road. What did you want?" I turned to look at him in profile. The yellowish light of the street lamps filtering through the window revealed drops of sweat on his temple, despite the cold air conditioning. I smiled, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm so happy for Inaya and Tavon, although it's weird, don't you think? Tavon spends his life away for work. They've barely seen each other. But what aim, huh? A gift from heaven." My comment was like a poisoned arrow straight to his deepest fear. Cassius swerved, and the car wobbled for an instant before recovering stability. "Well, they're newlyweds. These things happen, surely. Surely it was during one of Tavon's quick visits home." His voice was a breathless whisper. He didn't dare look at me. I continued my attack with the same innocent tone. "But if I remember correctly, Tavon has been away almost a month and just came back yesterday. And Inaya said she's several weeks along. I didn't forget to ask her. Tomorrow I'll call her to tell her to get a detailed ultrasound. With today's technology, you can know the exact day of conception to see if it coincides with Tavon's return, lest there be some confusion and the poor guy gets upset." Cassius went mute, not daring to say anything else. I saw his Adam's apple bobbing. His face was pure tension. He was afraid that the truth would come to light. If the pregnancy coincided with Tavon's absence and the days when he and Inaya met in secret, it would be the death sentence for his honor and his life. I turned to look out the window, watching the city lights pass by, and smiled inwardly. His silence was the clearest answer. He didn't want that child. For him, it was a disaster, living proof of his sin. For Anaya, it was a lifesaver. The two accomplices were starting to have opposing interests, and that was the crack through which I would slip to destroy their diabolical alliance. "Hey," I said just before entering the garage with a voice light as air. Anaya's face didn't seem like that of a woman happy about her pregnancy. It seemed more like she was afraid of something. Didn't you get that impression? Cassius didn't answer. He just stomped on the gas, and the car launched into the dark garage, the same way he was launching headfirst into a dead end in his own life. After that night, the atmosphere in both my house and Tavon's became strangely tense. Tavon kept floating on the cloud of fatherhood, calling me every day to tell me about Inaya's cravings. He treated her like a queen. Meanwhile, Inaya and Cassius, the two guilty parties, lived in the hell they themselves had created. I knew Inaya was using the pregnancy to pressure Cassius. She wanted security, money, or even status, and Cassius tried by all means to deny his responsibility and get rid of that burden. Sitting in my office, I looked at the ultrasound Inaya had posted on Facebook with an ambiguous message, "A gift from God. Mommy will protect you at all costs." I smiled with disdain. Protect him at all costs, or use him to blackmail her lover? I needed to know with certainty who the father was, but I couldn't act directly. I couldn't take Inaya for a paternity test. It would alert them and hurt Tavon prematurely. I called Makeda. "Makeda, I need your help. Do you know anyone at the clinic where Inaya goes for checkups? I need access to her medical records, but with total discretion." Makeda sighed on the other end of the line. "What are you planning? Stealing her records? That's a crime? Are you crazy?" I smiled bitterly. "No, I just need one piece of data. The expected due date. From there, I can deduce the conception date. I need an excuse for Tavon to start suspecting on his own. If I tell him now, he won't believe me. He's blind with love." Makeda fell silent for a moment and then accepted. While waiting for the information, I started executing my plan to divide them. I knew Cassius was terrified. He feared Inaya would do something crazy and tell everything if he didn't meet her demands. I had to push that fear to the limit. That night, while Cassius smoked on the balcony, I brought him an orange juice with a tone full of concern. "Honey, today I stopped by to see Inaya, and she was crying inconsolably. She says she has pregnancy stress, that she's scared Tavon won't believe the child is his because he's been away so long. I told her not to worry, that Tavon is a sweetheart. But she kept muttering weird things like someone was forcing her to abort, that someone didn't want to take responsibility. I didn't understand anything. Do you think she's hiding something from us?" Hearing my words, the cigarette fell from his hands. He turned sharply with a face pale as wax. She said that? Who is forcing her to abort?" I shrugged with the most innocent face in the world. "I don't know. She was just crying and saying that. It seemed very strange to me. Who would want her to abort?" My phrase left in the air made Cassius start to shake. He pulled his hair, pacing from one side to the other like a wounded animal. He was thinking Inaya planned to betray him, exposing him to me with hints. The fear of being discovered filled him with resentment towards her. He started seeing her as a dangerous and treacherous woman he had to mistrust. On the other hand, I also acted on Inaya. From a fake profile, I sent her an anonymous message. "Your lover is trying to evade responsibility. He's looking for lawyers to hide his assets and plans to divorce to go abroad. You and your son are just an obstacle. Be careful." Inaya, upon receiving that message, would go crazy. She would think Cassius was deceiving her, that he planned to abandon them to save himself. Mistrust, fear, and greed were corroding their illicit relationship. They were no longer lovers, but enemies. One wanted to use the baby as a weapon, the other saw it as a catastrophe. And I, in the middle, only needed to stoke the fire a little so that alliance would be consumed in the flames of its own betrayal. While the fire in my home spread in silence, my brilliant lawyer friend brought me another shocking piece of news. A piece of news that made me realize the man I had shared my life with wasn't just an unscrupulous adulterer, but a genuine economic criminal. That noon, Makeda met me in her office. She put a thick file on the table, looking at me with a grave and compassionate expression. "Zara, Get ready. The problem isn't just that he used house money to keep his mistress, it's much worse. I opened the file. Figures, contracts, and invoices danced before my eyes. They were the proofs that Cassius had been using his position as purchasing manager to conspire with suppliers, inflate prices, and receive million-dollar commissions. That money didn't go to his account, but was diverted through ghost accounts to a black fund he had created for his own ends. "Look at this," Makeda said, pointing to a transfer marked in red. "This money comes from a construction company. It was transferred to his mother's account with the concept loan repayment, but in reality, it's his 10% commission for a cement contract last month. In the last 2 years, he has embezzled almost $1 million. Zara, this is misappropriation. It's a very serious crime. If the company finds out, not only will they fire him, but he could end up in jail for years." I listened to Makeda with a buzzing in my ears. I felt the floor opening beneath my feet. I knew Cassius was greedy, that he had his tricks, but I never imagined he was so reckless and stupid. He was risking his career, his honor, and his freedom for boundless ambition. What did he use that dirty money for? To buy a house for Inaya? To live a life of luxury, or to prepare a future without me? Rage consumed me, but it wasn't the jealousy of a betrayed woman anymore. It was the contempt of an honest businesswoman towards a fraudster. For 10 years I had built my reputation. I had always taught him to live with dignity, to earn money with his own effort. And meanwhile, behind my back, he dedicated himself to these shady matters. Not only had he betrayed me, but he had betrayed the most basic values of a human being. I closed the file and took a deep breath to calm myself. "Thanks, Makeda. This is the death sentence I needed. I thought a divorce and division of assets would be enough, but now, no. I'm not going to let him get away scot-free. If he dared to do it, he'll have to face the consequences. I'll keep this, and at the right moment, I'll show him how expensive greed is." I left the office and drove aimlessly through the city. Watching people come and go, I remembered the early days of our marriage. We were poor, but happy. We ate instant noodles and dreamed of a small house. Now we had a big house. We didn't lack money. But the people had changed until they became unrecognizable. Cassius had let himself be blinded by money and desire. He had burned the bridge connecting him to decency. Upon arriving home, I saw Cassius watching television, trying to seem calm, but with an unsettled gaze. I looked at him and felt nothing for him anymore, only disgust and pity for a wasted life. He didn't know yet that the scythe hung over his head and that the one wielding it was the wife he had always underestimated. That afternoon, the late autumn sun projected a weak, golden light on the asphalt, unable to dispel the biting cold. Sitting in my home office with a cup of cold coffee in my hand, I looked at my phone screen where Tavon's number appeared. I took a deep breath, holding back a sigh, and told myself this was bitter medicine, but necessary. A sharp pain, but better than letting my brother live deceived for the rest of his life. I pressed the call button. It had barely rung twice when Tavon's cheerful and carefree voice answered, "Hey Zara, what's up? I was just thinking about taking Inaya out for some good BBQ tonight." Hearing the happiness in his voice, I felt as if a knife were twisting my insides, but I forced myself to sound calm and attentive. "Hi Tavon, just calling to see how you guys were. Hey, the other day I remembered something, the private clinic Inaya goes to. I think I know someone working there, a friend from high school who's now the head nurse. Her name is Keisha. I don't know if Inaya would know her." There was a brief silence on the other end. Probably Tavon was asking his wife. Then I heard his voice again, enthusiastic. "Wow, what a coincidence. Let me ask her. Honey, Zara says she has a friend who is the head nurse at your clinic. Her name is Keisha. Does that ring a bell?" I held my breath, imagining Inaya's face losing color in that instant. After about 10 seconds of silence, Tavon's voice sounded again, this time with a nuance of doubt. "She says it doesn't ring a bell, that she goes to checkups and that's it. She doesn't notice names. Why do you ask?" I smiled slightly, my voice loaded with fake concern but with considerable weight. "Oh, it's just that I thought if it was a trusted place, better. I was going to call Keisha to ask her to keep an eye on Inaya, to take good care of her, and while at it, check her file to see how the tests are going, the exact due date, so we can prepare better. With people you know, you're always calmer. Keisha is very meticulous. Nothing escapes her. My phrase, "nothing escapes her," was like an arrow straight to the bullseye. I heard a noise on the other end of the line, as if something had fallen. Taven's voice sounded alarmed. "Careful, honey. What's wrong? Did you drop your glass? Did you burn yourself?" Inaya's voice arrived trembling and full of fear. "No, nothing's wrong. I just got a little dizzy." I smiled coldly and added another psychological blow. "She got dizzy? Well, all the more reason to be careful. Okay, I'm calling Keisha right now. I'll tell her to check the file this very afternoon and inform me. We're family. We have to look out for each other." Hearing that, I knew Inaya would be scared to death. If my fictional character Keisha reviewed her file, she would discover that the gestational age betrayed a conception date matching Tavon's absence and the days she was seeing my husband. Okay, I'll tell her. I gotta go. Inaya isn't feeling well and I'm going to take her to rest." Tavon hung up in a hurry. His voice didn't sound so cheerful anymore. Now it was tinged with worry. I put the phone on the table and looked out the window. Gray clouds were gathering, darkening the sky. I knew that on the other end of the line, Inaya was living the most terrifying moments of her life. She wouldn't dare let me ask for a review. She would try to prevent it at all costs, and the only way to do that was to seek her accomplice to plan a strategy. The fish had taken the bait. Now I just had to wait for it to thrash about to reveal its fatal mistake. Just as I had foreseen, Inaya's panic reached its peak. She couldn't sit idly waiting for her end. Immediately after my call, the GPS tracker I had secretly placed under Cassius's car started moving. The signal blinked on my phone like the racing heart of the two guilty parties. Cassius left the office earlier than usual, with the excuse of an important meeting, but he didn't head downtown. Instead, he drove at full speed toward the outskirts, where there were tea houses and discreet, secluded restaurants. I, in my car, parked at a certain distance from his office exit, silently followed the red dot on my phone screen. It started to rain. Thick drops hit the windshield, creating a somber atmosphere. I drove automatically, with an empty heart, as if attending the funeral of my 10-year marriage. Cassius's final destination was a hidden spot called the Lotus Lounge, in an alley on the outskirts, a place with private VIP booths and lush gardens, perfect for secret dates or for guilty parties to hatch their plans. I parked at a prudent distance, enough not to be discovered, but with visibility of the entrance. 15 minutes later, an Uber arrived. Inaya got out, covered with a raincoat and a mask, looking furtive. She looked both ways and scurried inside. Seeing the scene, I felt a mixture of bitter laughter and pity. Two people who had sworn eternal love to their partners now hid like rats, fearing the light and the truth. I stayed in the car with the engine off. The outside cold started to seep in, but I didn't feel it. In my mind, I imagined the conversation unfolding inside. Surely Inaya would be crying, blaming Cassius, demanding he take charge of the pregnancy or silence me. And Cassius, that coward, would be desperate looking for excuses to avoid his responsibility. Selfishness and fear would lead them to attack each other, and that would be the moment the curtain fell. I took out my phone and typed a message. My fingers slid across the screen, each letter sharp as a knife. I didn't send it immediately. I saved it in drafts, waiting for the perfect moment. I needed an eyewitness, someone to see the raw reality with their own eyes, so the pain would sever any bond, so no one could lie or deceive anymore. Time passed slowly. The rain kept falling. I looked at my watch. More than 30 minutes had passed since Inaya had entered. Enough time for an argument, for confessions, and for my patience to turn into action. I took a deep breath. I regained my calm. Taven was at the construction site, supervising the pouring of concrete before nightfall. The noise of the mixer and the workers' shouts had him completely absorbed. Suddenly his phone vibrated in his pocket. He wiped his cement-covered hands on his pants and took it out. A message from an unknown number. He was about to delete it, thinking it was spam, but the first line left him paralyzed with his heart in a fist. Your wife Anaya and your brother-in-law Cassius are meeting secretly at the Lotus Lounge, VIP Booth 3. Go now and discover whose child your wife is expecting. Don't be the fool raising another man's son. Taven read the message 3 times. Every word was like a drill in his brain, paralyzing his senses. He couldn't believe it. Anaya, his sweet and good wife, whom he loved more than his own life. Cassius, his respected brother-in-law, who always helped him. How could they do something like that to him? But his instinct told him something wasn't right. The suspicion, which had already begun to grow with his sister's hints, now burned strongly. Trembling, he called Anaya. The phone rang again and again, but no one answered. He called Cassius. The same result. The phone was off or out of range. Their silence was the clearest confession. Blood rushed to his head. He threw his hard hat on the ground and shouted at the workers. That's it for today. Everyone go home. Without further explanation, he ran to his motorcycle and took off like a madman, despite the rain and the slippery asphalt. Only one thought was in his mind. He had to go there. He had to see it with his own eyes. The happy images of his family, Anaya's smile, Cassius's encouraging pats, everything crumbled in his mind, turning into sharp fragments, tearing his heart. The 6-mile ride seemed like an eternity. He drove screaming under the rain, tears mixed with water, salty on his lips. He prayed for it to be a bad joke, that upon arrival he would find nothing, that his wife would be at home resting. But his reason reminded him of Anaya's strange behavior, Cassius's elusive look at the last family meal. When his motorcycle braked hard in front of the lounge, I saw my brother from my car, soaked, with eyes bloodshot like a wounded animal. Without asking anyone, he burst into the place with a fury that made the employees step aside, frightened. I gripped the steering wheel with my heart beating wildly, watching with pain as my brother entered the den of betrayal. Taven ran like a whirlwind down the wooden hallway, his thunderous steps drowning out the sound of the rain. He stopped in front of the door to VIP Booth 3, the place indicated in the message. His breathing was agitated, his chest rising and falling violently. From inside came the sobs of a woman and the shouts of a man. Sounds so familiar they left him paralyzed. And now what do we do? Zara suspects something. I'm so scared. What if Tevon finds out? Anaya's voice, trembling. Shut up already. Why didn't you take the pill and now you blame me? I told you to get an abortion. Cassius's voice, cold and cruel. Taven couldn't take it anymore. With all his might, he kicked the door. Bang! The door flew open, crashing against the wall. The scene revealed before his eyes was rawer than any nightmare. Under the dim light, Anaya was sitting on the floor, crying with her clothes disheveled. Cassius was standing in front of her, with a wad of bills in his hand, about to throw them at her. Seeing Tevon in the doorway, soaked, with eyes red as hell, they stood petrified. Tevon! Anaya stammered, pale as a ghost. Cassius dropped the bills, which flew across the floor. He stood mouth open, trembling, unable to articulate a word. Tevon looked at the 2 people he loved most in the world with a lump in his throat. The pain was so immense it paralyzed him. Only his eyes shed 2 rivers of burning tears. Why? Why you 2? Why did you do this to me? He screamed with a heartbreaking wail. He lunged at Cassius, not to hit him, but to grab him by the collar of his shirt and slam him against the wall. You're my brother-in-law, my brother! How could you sleep with my wife? How did you dare? Cassius, terrified, tried to break free, pleading, Tevon, calm down. Let me explain. It's not what it looks like. It was her who seduced me. Cassius's cowardly excuse was the last straw. Tevon punched him in the face. Pow! Blood gushed from Cassius's nose, and he fell to the floor groaning. Anaya screamed and clung to Tevon's legs. Don't hit him, please. It was my fault. He forced me. Taven looked at the woman kneeling at his feet, the one he once swore to protect. Now she gave him infinite disgust. He kicked her away. "Get off. Don't touch me. You make me sick. The child you're carrying is a bastard, a piece of trash." I witnessed the whole tragedy from the doorway, and tears fell down my cheeks. I felt no satisfaction, only immense pain for my brother. The truth had come to light at too high a price. I entered the room. My voice, cold and firm, resonated amidst the chaos. "That's enough, Tavon. Leave him. Hitting him will only dirty your hands. Let the law and their conscience punish them." My appearance left everyone astonished. Cassius looked at me with swollen eyes. Inaya lowered her head, not daring to look at me. Tavon turned to me and broke down, crying like a child. He ran into my arms, trembling. I caressed my brother's soaked back while looking at Cassius and Inaya with contempt. "Get ready. The curtain has fallen." The air in the VIP booth smelled of dampness and the rot of freshly discovered lies. Inaya's sobs resonated, but no one felt compassion anymore. Kneeling on the cold floor, she clung to Tavon's pants, pleading, "Tavon, believe me, please. I never wanted to betray you. It was him. It was Cassius who forced me. He threatened to ruin you, to leave you jobless. I did it for you, to protect our family." I, leaning against the doorframe, observed the pathetic performance with a grimace of disdain. Human shamelessness has no limits. Cassius, with a bleeding nose, hearing Inaya blame him for everything, exploded. "You lying bitch! What are you saying? That I forced you? You were the one who sought me out, who told me your husband was useless in bed and didn't satisfy you." He kicked Inaya, who fell hitting her head against the table, but she got up disheveled like a fury and launched herself to scratch him. "Coward, miserable wretch. When you were enjoying it, you called me your love, your treasure. And now that we've been caught, you wash your hands of it. You told me your wife was a piece of wood, that you were sick of that old woman." Those who until a few minutes ago were passionate lovers were now tearing each other apart, revealing their dirtiest secrets. Tavon, in the middle of the storm, looked at them with empty eyes. Disappointment had hit rock bottom. "Enough!" he shouted. His voice, hoarse but imposing, silenced them. "You act very well, better than in a soap opera. So do you. I was just a clown, a fool to manipulate, right?" Cassius dragged himself to him. "Tavon, listen to me. This woman is a harpy. I only had a moment of weakness." Tavon stepped back, looking at him with disgust. "Shut up. Don't pronounce my name with your dirty mouth. Brotherhood? A brother sleeps with your wife and turns you into the cuckold raising his child?" Cassius was left speechless. Inaya cried again. "Tavon, our son. Think of our son." Tavon's gaze rested on Inaya's belly. He hesitated for an instant, but then it turned icy. "Are you sure it's my son and not this wretch's? And even if it were, a mother as lying and promiscuous as you doesn't deserve to raise him." The phrase was the final stab. Inaya collapsed crying in silence. The luxurious booth was now a desolate battlefield, full of the remains of trust and honor, impregnated with the smell of betrayal and despair. Tavon clenched his fists, about to explode again. I knew it was time to intervene. I couldn't allow my brother, in a fit of rage, to end up with legal problems. "Tavon, stop," I said, putting myself between him and Cassius. "It's not worth it. He doesn't deserve you ruining your future for him." Tavon looked at me with eyes full of tears. "Zara, it hurts too much. I hate them." I hugged him. "I know, but let's go. Staying here will only hurt us more. I'll take care of the punishment. I promise you they won't go unpunished." My calm seemed to reassure him. He rested his head on my shoulder, collapsing. I turned to Cassius and Inaya, who were huddled in a corner. My look was pure contempt. I took out my phone. "Have you finished your performance? Well, listen well. Everything you've done, everything you've said today, and even your encounters in my own bed, I have it all recorded." Hearing the word recorded, Cassius's face decomposed. "What? What are you saying? You recorded it all?" I smiled coldly. "Not only that, I have 2 minutes of video of your romp in my marital bed, your disgusting chats, the bank transfers. I have everything. I thought I'd keep a minimum of respect for you, but I see you don't deserve it, so don't blame me for being cruel." Inaya fainted, or pretended to. Cassius slumped in a chair, sweating buckets. He knew that with that evidence, his life and career were finished. I took Tavon by the arm and turned my back on him. "Let's go, Tavon. Let them devour each other in their own mud. In our house, there is no room for people like that." Upon leaving the lounge, the rain had subsided, but the cold wind kept blowing. Tavon walked beside me like an automaton. I didn't take him to his condo or my parents' house. I drove to Makeda's apartment. It was the safest place, where he could vent without anyone seeing him and where I would show him the rawest truth so he would open his eyes completely. I saw him crying silently in the rearview mirror. My soul ached, but I knew it was a necessary pain. He had to suffer to the bottom to be able to remove that tumor and start over. Courage, brother, I thought. After the storm, the sun always comes out. Makeda's apartment on the 25th floor was a haven of peace. Makeda had prepared a room and a hot teapot. Without asking questions, she left us alone. Tavon was sitting on the sofa, trembling, with a lost gaze. I knew words of comfort would be useless. He needed a dose of reality. "Tavon, look at this," I said, showing him the 2-minute video. His expression went from bewilderment to horror, and finally, to the deepest disgust. In the video, his sweet wife moaned under his brother-in-law's body, insulting her own husband. Tavon couldn't take it. He slapped the phone away and ran to the bathroom to vomit. He vomited the bile, the trust, and the blind love he had professed for her. I watched him from the door with a shrinking heart. His pain hurt me, but I felt relieved that he finally knew the truth. When he came out, his face was pale and gaunt, but his eyes had changed. There was no weakness anymore, but a flame of hate and cold determination. "Zara, I was wrong. I was stupid. I killed myself working to give her a better life, and she treated me like an imbecile." I took his hand. "It's not your fault. The fault lies with people's wickedness. Now you have to be strong and resolve this. What do you plan to do with Inaya?" Tavon remained silent for a moment and then looked at me with steely determination. "Immediate divorce. I never want to see her again. The child, if it's mine, I'll take care of it. If not, I'll kick them both out onto the street." I nodded, admiring his firmness. "Good. I'll help you with the paperwork. And as for Cassius, he won't get away scot-free either. Tomorrow, he'll know what hit him." That night, we stayed together in silence. The storm had passed, and although dawn would bring more battles, we knew justice was on our side. The next morning, I woke up with unusual mental clarity. While Tavon slept, I met with Makeda in the living room. On the table was a sealed file, the death sentence for Cassius's career and life with all the evidence we had collected. "Everything ready, Makeda?" I asked. She nodded, pushing the file toward me. "Everything ready. The complaint is drafted, addressed to the board of directors, the audit committee, and the union of his company. I've attached a USB drive with all the recordings, photos, and bank statements. I just need your approval to send it." I didn't hesitate for a second. "Send it. Let him taste the flavor of the bitterest failure." Makeda smiled, and with a click, the bomb was activated. Less than 2 hours later, the chain of events was unleashed. The company called an emergency meeting. They called Cassius to the CEO's office. Upon leaving, his face was a poem. He had the suspension letter without pay in his hand. Immediately after, security guards escorted him to collect his things and expelled him from the building before the astonished gaze and murmurs of hundreds of employees. His reputation, built with so much effort, shattered in an instant. The news of his infidelity and corruption spread like wildfire. His name became synonymous with betrayal and dishonor. Partners turned their backs on him. Friends avoided him. His phone didn't stop ringing with calls from creditors and messages of contempt. I, from Makeda's house, savored a cup of tea, imagining his pathetic situation with a sensation of lightness. My punishment had only just begun. That afternoon I received a call from an unknown number. It was Cassius. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it cut off and then blocked the number. I didn't want to hear his pleas. Justice, both professional and personal, had barely begun its course. I got up and went to wake Tavon. "Get up, brother. The day has just begun. We have a lot to do." That noon, while organizing papers, the doorbell rang insistently. Upon opening, I found 2 men from a bank. They handed me a foreclosure notice. The figure left me breathless. $300,000. The house, our home, had been mortgaged by Cassius behind my back 6 months ago. I remembered the day he gave me a sheaf of papers saying they were for a company guarantee. Trusting him, I signed without reading. And now that signature faced me with ruin. What had he spent that money on? On luxuries for Anaya, on an apartment in her name, and on failed cryptocurrency investments. Just at that moment, Cassius arrived, haggard and reeking of alcohol. Seeing the men from the bank, he tried to flee, but I stood in his way. "Where are you going? Come in and face the consequences of your actions. $300,000. You are incredible." Cassius knelt crying and begging. "Zara, save me. Pay the debt, please. If they take the house, we'll be on the street." I looked at him with infinite disgust. "There is no we. I will sell this house to pay the debt. I'll keep the rest as compensation for my lost youth, and you will leave empty-handed. You mortgaged my trust, and now you will pay with your life." He knew I was serious. I was no longer the submissive woman he could manipulate. I was the creditor of his life. Meanwhile, Tavon returned to his condo and put all of Anaya's belongings into 2 suitcases. When she arrived, she found her things in the hallway, under the rain. "Tavon, are you kicking me out? I'm pregnant," she screamed, crying. He looked at her with glacial coldness. "Don't use the child as an excuse. Go to your parents or your lover. This house is not a refuge for adulteresses." He slammed the door in her face, leaving her alone with her humiliation. Desperate, Anaya went to the apartment Cassius had bought her, but found him at the door, drunk and out of his mind. "Witch!" he screamed, slapping her. "Because of you, I've lost everything," Anaya cried. "You tricked me. You promised to take care of us." Cassius laughed like a madman. "Take care of you? That money came from mortgaging my wife's house, and now I've lost everything. Get out of here." He kicked her suitcases, scattering her clothes on the street. Anaya, sitting in the middle of the disaster under the rain, started to laugh. A bitter and chilling laugh. She dreamed of being a queen and ended up buried in a fake gold mine. The next day, I sighted Cassius at a coffee shop near the courthouse. I arrived early and put the signed divorce petition and the file of evidence on the table. When he entered, I barely recognized him. He was haggard, with stubble and deep dark circles. "Zara, do you really want a divorce? Can't you give me a chance?" he pleaded with a broken voice. I took a sip of tea. "Chance? You repaid 10 years of sacrifice with betrayal, debt, and corruption. Look at this file. If I hand it to the police, how many years do you think you'll spend in jail?" Cassius glanced at the papers. His face turned ashen. He knelt in the middle of the coffee shop. "Zara, I beg you, don't send me to jail. I'll do whatever you want." I felt not a shred of pity. "Get up. I give you 2 options. Either you sign the divorce, leave with nothing, and leave me the rest to pay the debt, or see you in criminal court and you lose everything, including your freedom." Trembling, he took the pen and signed. His signature, crooked and shaky, put an end to 10 years of marriage. He hung his head crying, not from regret, but for the material loss. I got up and left without saying goodbye. The news of our divorce and Cassius's firing reached his hometown like a trail of gunpowder. As expected, my mother-in-law was the first to react. She showed up in the city that same night, furious, ready to put the daughter-in-law who had ruined her son in her place. "Heartless woman. What have you done to my son for him to end up like this? A man can have a slip-up, and a good wife should know how to forgive and guide him back. But you have sunk him." I let her vent. I understood her maternal blindness. When she finished, breathless, I offered her a glass of water. "Drink, mother-in-law. And now, before judging me, watch this." I connected the phone to the TV and played the 2-minute video. Then the photos, the messages, and the bank statements. At first, she refused to look, but Inaya's moans and Cassius's vulgar voice left her petrified. She saw her son, her pride, committing adultery with his sister-in-law, diverting thousands of dollars to his mistress while she lived poorly back home. When it was all over, she remained silent, pale, with her hand on her chest. Tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks. "My child, I didn't know he was so miserable. I'm sorry, I judged you wrongly. Poor you." Her pain was sincere. She was also a victim of her son's lies. "You aren't to blame, mother-in-law. The fault is his. I can't keep living with a man like that." She left with her head down, carrying the shame. She no longer defended her son. The truth had crushed her. For me, it was the last chapter. It was time to start living for myself. With the divorce decree in hand, the first thing I did was put the condo up for sale. It was an empty shell full of dirty memories. I wanted to erase any trace of them, like excising a tumor. On moving day, while packing my things in boxes, I saw our wedding photo. 2 smiling young people swearing eternal love. What irony. I didn't tear it up. I simply took it down, put it against the wall, and left it there. A tribute to a past that no longer existed. I took only what was mine, my books, my plants, and a heart full of scars that was beginning to heal. I handed the keys to a young couple, wishing them the happiness I hadn't found within those walls. With the money from the sale, after settling the debt, I bought a small house with a garden in a quiet area on the outskirts. I invited my parents and Tavon to live with me. The first night in the new house, lying in my bed, listening to the crickets singing, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. I had lost an unfaithful husband and a luxurious house, but I had regained my sleep. Sometimes a loss is the beginning of a reunion with oneself. After the storm, my brother Tavon became a quiet man. The carefree smile had disappeared from his face, replaced by a deep and mature look. He left his old job, a place full of painful memories, and for a time he shut himself in, consumed by tobacco and silence. I didn't pressure him. I simply left his favorite food at the door and sometimes sat beside him in silence, so he knew he wasn't alone. One day, he came out of his room shaved and dressed in a clean shirt. He smiled at me, a smile still fragile but alive. "Zara, I'm okay. I can't go on like this. I have to take care of our parents and you." He found a new job at an international company and immersed himself in it, not to flee, but to rebuild himself. On weekends, he helped my father in the garden, and laughter filled the house again. I knew his wound was healing. About Inaya, I heard she gave birth to a boy who was the spitting image of Cassius. He, missing and harassed by debt, didn't send her a cent. Inaya's life was a constant struggle, selling cheap clothes online while enduring the insults of people calling her the other woman. One day, Tavon saw her on a live stream, haggard and bitter. He watched her for a moment and then turned off the phone with indifference. "Everyone reaps what they sow, right, sister?" he told me, and he went on with his things as if she were a complete stranger. His calm reassured me. When there is no more hate, it means forgiveness, or at least oblivion, has arrived. Our new house filled with life. Dinners became the best time of the day, a space for laughter and simple stories without lies or secrets. Looking at my family, I felt an overwhelming emotion. The storm had washed away the rot, leaving only the solid foundations of family love. We had survived together. One night, Makeda came to visit. Sitting on the porch under a starry sky, she said to me, "You're different, Zara. More serene, more radiant. They say a woman is most beautiful when she belongs to no one." I smiled. "It's not that. It's just that now I belong to myself and my family. I've wasted a lot of time chasing ghosts. Now I want to live in the moment." One Sunday morning, while enjoying a coffee and a book in the garden, Makeda appeared again. This time she brought a business plan. "What do you say, boss lady? Are you going to rest forever? You have several important offers on the table, $1 million projects." My eyes lit up. The passion for my work, dormant for so long, woke up. Of course I am. I'm 35, I have a life ahead of me and bills to pay. A woman, with or without a man, needs her own career and her own money to walk with her head high. Makeda nodded. That's my girl. Hey, and seriously now, do you regret having been so hard on them? They say Cassius is working as a laborer down near the border to run from his debts and that Ainaya barely has enough to eat. I put down the coffee cup and looked her in the eyes. Regret? Never. Being cruel to the wicked is being compassionate to myself. If I hadn't cut it clean, the ones who would be destroyed now would be my brother and me. Karma is fair, Makeda. He who sows winds reaps storms. I just helped the harvest arrive a little sooner. I looked at the blue sky, where white clouds floated lazily. The life I had ahead was a blank canvas. There might be more storms, but now I felt strong enough to face them. I was no longer the weak and dependent woman of yesterday. I was Zara, the woman who had gone through the hurricane and now painted her own sky. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.